Episode 6 of The Traitors was really good. Let's get into it. There was no murder because no one took the shield from the previous episode. So now they're showing Rob and Ron playing chess and they're bonding. Now, this group of folks I like to call the Scooby Doo gang because they're trying to figure out how to get out Colton, which I was all for it. I was so happy. I was like, yes, do that. Ugh. This is the face he made when when Lisa came in the room and he was like he was like, I'm looking to my future. Ugh. But he's gonna have some interesting faces at the round table, which I loved. This is where Rob was losing his fellow traders, and he was saying that he didn't think Ron was a traitor. And they were like, okay, Rob, but Ron's going next. That was kind of the plan. The Scooby Doo gang is at it again. I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him. They pull Rob in because they need his vote and they want him to help get Colton out too. And Rob doesn't want to get Colton out because Colton is an ally of his. This scene, Colton, oh my gosh, he just thinks he's smarter than he is. And he's telling Lisa he's saying, keep me safe in the turret and I'll try to keep you safe, whatever. And she's playing it off. And I will have to, I do have to say, people who I didn't care for previously on their shows, like Lisa, I liked her on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills at first, but then she started getting on my nerves. So, and then Candace, same. I liked her on Real Housewives of Potomac, but then she started getting on my nerves. But I like them both in this. So they're doing their slow mo walk to the round table. By the way, um, let's see, Ireland traders. They don't do a slow mo walk to the to the round table. I think they should. It just gives it a little oomph. So Mark gets it started, and he's talking about the Porsche vote and well, nobody wanted to get it started at first. But then Mark chimed in and he mentioned to Ron how um, he got Portia out and it was compelling. And then he also mentioned Tiffany. And then Ron said, a lot of people have gotten it wrong. He was very well spoken, made his point, and they were talking about that. And then Dorinda chimed in, and you know how that one episode where he told Dorinda he didn't want to get to know her family or anything like that, and then everybody thought that was harsh. Well, apparently, he's been doing interviews, Ron, and he said that Dorinda said something very offensive to him, which would make sense because their dynamic that kind of came out of the blue. But I believe him. I believe Dorinda did say something because that Dorinda, I believe it. But anyway, they were talking about the votes and everything, and then Colton chimed in and he mentioned everything that Ron got wrong, and Ron just rattled off a list of things, and he told Colton, you got it wrong more than me. And I was like, oh. And Ron was like, after he told him you got it wrong more than me, he said, everybody, you got it wrong. You got it wrong with Michael too, but everybody ignores that because they didn't like Michael, but because everybody loved Portia, they're stuck on him. I was like, ooh. And then Lisa chimed in, and she said, if we're going to hold him accountable, we need to hold you accountable, Colton. And that's the look when Colton looked like, you could tell he's thinking, oh, it's pointing towards me. That's one of the looks I said I was going to like at the round table. Johnny chimed in, and Lisa's looking like, yeah, this might happen. They might be getting rid of Colton. He's worried. And then Colton was like, I'm not a traitor. And Rob was like, I believe you. And I'm like, Rob. And Candace is looking at Rob like, what? Finally, Ron is just tired of it all. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to say goodbye to you all because he knows it's pointed towards him and that's where it's going. He said, I'm just going to say goodbye to you all now. And he goes around the tables, saying how he feels about everybody. And then Natalie and Rob are like, I don't think he's a traitor. Tara finally chimes in and she says, you know, she said, I hope this doesn't get me murdered, but I don't think Ron is a traitor. I don't. Colton is scared to death. Natalie says she doesn't think it's Ron either. Um, and then Rob chimes in. Well, he not chimes in, but Rob says, the only way we'll know is if we banish you, which is what Ron was saying. And everyone was pretty much saying that. Candace was saying that, like, that's the way we know. And I was sitting here thinking, What? Don't banish me just so you can find out. I wanted Ron to fight a little more. And Natalie was like, I don't want to sacrifice another faithful. And Ron was like, well, then don't do it. That's what I'm saying. So then Colton, who should have been sitting there being quiet, but he says, if we want to get a name to move off of Ron, then Lisa, I have to say, and all this was building, it was pretty intense at the table, but I can imagine what they were going through because I know it was edited. But he mentioned Lisa, and he said the Portia vote never sat well with me. That is, now I do have to say Lisa shouldn't have voted for Portia that first time because it did seem she could have just not voted for Portia and let everybody else, like her fellow traders, that's fine, let them do it. But Lisa shouldn't have voted for Portia. Um, well, actually, because I don't think Candace did either. That is a big. I see why everybody is looking at Lisa because of that. Because she didn't need to, but she's saying she's not a traitor. And then Colton says, or she says, "I think you're a traitor." And I saw an interview or a podcast with Boston Rob and Bob the drag queen, and they were saying, Lisa, that's where she messed up because if someone accuses you of being a traitor, you don't come right back at them as being a traitor because it just seems too obvious. Candace chimes in and she says, we're doing it again. And Colton said, what? And she said, we're shifting. We need to stay on task. She was, sticking up for a fellow trader. So now it's time to vote. Everybody votes, and then Rob, or they're writing down their votes, and they're waiting on Rob. And he's the last one. And he is visibly stuck. Everybody's waiting. Everybody. So Rob finally writes his name down, and then they show everyone. So Tara votes for Colton. Ron votes for Lisa. Maura votes for Ron, which she was a member of the Scooby Doo gang, but I guess her mind got changed because I thought she was voting for Colton. Of course, Lisa votes for Colton. Eric, I think that's Eric, he votes for Lisa. Jam Jam Ron. Dorinda Ron. Natalie Lisa. Colton's face. He's waiting on Rob's vote. Again, everyone's waiting on Rob. Oh wait, no, they're not waiting on Rob. They're still voting. But let's go back to this terrifying look of his. I also want to add Mark. He voted for, I think he voted for Ron or Lisa, but he was in the Scooby Doo gang too. The Scooby Doo gang just fell apart. And Rob voted Lisa. And I think the looks of Lisa and Candace, if anyone was paying attention, they should have been wondering, those reactions were interesting. Oh, yeah, there's Mark who voted for Ron. So Ron got the most votes. And I'm like, man, why didn't they just stick to Colton? So Ron got up and told him he was a faithful and he left. So the announcement was made that there will be a banquet where they can enjoy a meal. We all know there's a catch. Colton tells Lisa that he's expecting a housewife and housewife behavior, and that's why he was suspicious of Lisa. Which Lisa was a little different than she usually is, but her argument was, "Don't expect me to be a housewife. That's not who I am. I've been in this business blah blah, blah years." And she gave it to him good. They got into it again about who he expects her to be, and she set him straight. So in the turret, they showed that there will be an amulet that one of them will have to wear because they're gonna banish and murder in plain sight at the banquet. So here's where Rob is trying to explain to them that he was close to Ron and Colton, so it would be weird if he voted for them. That kind of like with the housewives thing. But here's where Rob messed up. He shouldn't have let everyone know how close he was with those two. That's what I think, and then it wouldn't have been as bad. So because I see his point, but you shouldn't have become as close to them. You could have dropped little things like, "Oh, maybe I think they could be," but he showed he was so close to them, and that's why he was kind of in that bind. They're pissed at Rob. Candace throws a cookie or something at him, but they talk. They let him decide. I think Candace was like, "You decide who's going to murder." They were just annoyed, and we'll see what happens next.